Thank you. I'm really grateful to be here. This is my first CIPHERS conference, and I hope not the last one. So today I'll talk about work conducted with Wendy Brunderbrew, who I wish was here as well today, Tanya, who everyone knows, and Joe Arvai from USC. And this is work that I conducted during my postdoctoral fellowship at USC. The title is Don't Say Vegan or Plant-Based, Focusing on Health and Sustainability, Improves Choice of Food Basket Without Meat and Dairy. And how do I use that? Okay. Oh, is there meat and dairy? Perfect. Well, limiting red meat consumption is good for people's health because it decreases the chances of health outcomes like cardiovascular diseases or diabetes. But also eating less red meat and dairy is good for the environment. And indeed, meat and dairy production contribute to about 75% of total food-related greenhouse emission and about 15% of total emission. And so sustainability and health recommendation are urgently asking for switching to diet that is more rich in fruits and vegetables and contains less of red meat. But food labeled as vegan is relatively unpopular. And in fact, there is a good qualitative study that perhaps gives us a good picture of why. And there's a quote of American consumer that says, "If I go vegan, my family and friends would hate me." But behavior science and psychology research offers low-cost intervention for changing behavior and suggests that the way food is described could perhaps help in behavior change. And what we know from research is that motivation for making better food choices is really important. And in fact, initial evidence suggests that food labeled as healthy or health motives are good motivators for eating food that contains less of red meat. There are also some research suggesting that labels that focus on environmental benefits help people engage more in consumption of food that contains less red meat and dairy. However, one main limitation of research on effects of labels on choosing food without meat and dairy is that majority of the research is either on focuses on hypothetical choices, or if the research is based on real choices, is conducted at college cafeterias, which predominantly serve college students, and we know that college education and age is associated with red meat consumption. Specifically, those with college education tend to eat less red meat. And so because the meat consumption, red meat consumption is far from being considered healthy and sustainable in most of the middle and high income countries, including the United States, it is important to identify strategies that are effective across all sociodemographic groups, and also among those who identify as red meat eaters. And in fact, eating identity play an important role in food choices. Individuals who identify as meat eaters, not only that they tend to eat more meat, but also are less likely to express intention to limit their meat consumption, while those who identify as healthy eaters tend to consume more fruits and vegetables and are more prompt to are more responsive to nutritional interventions. And so, building on that literature, together with my collaborators, we ask, are people more likely to choose a gourmet food gift basket without versus with meat and dairy when it's labeled as vegan, plant-based, healthy, sustainable, or healthy and sustainable? Do findings vary across sociodemographic groups? And do findings vary by eating identities? So we conducted a study on Understanding America survey. We had 7,341 participants. And our participants in the sample were asked to choose between two food baskets. One that contains meat and dairy and included, I'm not sure if I can read that well, sweet and savory snacks, salami, brie cheese, and pepper feta spread. And the other one without meat and dairy that could contain sweet and savory snacks, dried fruits, olives, and hummus spread. Participants were randomly assigned to 5 different conditions for 5 different labels on the basket: vegan, plant-based, healthy, sustainable, and healthy and sustainable. And this is how their choices were presented. So participants were told that to thank them for their participation in UAS study, we would like to send them a gift. We would like to send a gift to 10 randomly selected participants. And if you were selected, which gift would you like to receive? We also told them that both baskets were worth about the same. And this is the example of vegan label, and we also had a healthy label. It's important to mention that before the study, these are food baskets from actual online store. We ordered these baskets and make sure that the basket without meat and dairy is healthier in terms of its nutrition content, and it's also more environmental friendly. As I mentioned, we also asked participants about their eating identities. We asked them to answer whether they agree with the following statement: I am someone who eats red meat. I am a healthy eater. I am someone who eats vegan. So let's look at the first research question. Are people more likely? Well, I had a pretty straightforward title of this presentation, but let's look at the numbers. Food baskets without meat and dairy were less popular if labeled as vegan or plant-based versus healthy and or sustainable. So we have labels of the baskets on the x-axis, and the y-axis is the percentage of participants choosing the basket without meat and dairy. 20% chose the basket without meat and dairy when it was labeled as vegan. Plant-based labeled it slightly better, but not as good as healthy, which we had 41%, 43% for sustainable, and 44% for healthy and sustainable. We were expecting vegan basket be not very popular, but we didn't know that the effect's gonna be so strong for healthy and sustainable labels. So what about findings vary across sociodemographic groups? We found that label effect was consistent across sociodemographic groups. So independent of gender, age, race, ethnicity, education, and political affiliation, the food basket without meat and dairy was consistently the least popular when labeled as vegan, and the most popular when labeled as healthy or sustainable. So this is an example of education. The light blue bars represent those with no college education, and the dark blue bars represent those with college education. Again, we have labels on the x-axis, and y-axis represent percentage of participants choosing the basket without meat and dairy. You can see the pattern. And here is for political orientation. So the blue bars represent those who voted for Joe Biden, red bars those who voted for Donald Trump, and gray independent or not voters. Again, the same pattern. So what about eating identities? So first, let's look at our sample. We have 86% of our participants identify as red meat eaters. That's quite a lot. 59% as healthy eaters, and 7% as vegan eaters. We found that the label effect was stronger among red meat eaters. So again, the red bars represent those who identify as red meat eaters, the dark gray, those who did not. And we have labels, and y-axis represent percentages of participants choosing the basket without meat and dairy. And we see that there's about 15% of red meat eaters who chose the basket without meat and dairy when it was labeled as vegan. And we have these numbers more than double in the healthy and sustainable in both conditions. Similar results were also obtained for healthy eaters. Well, to conclude, food baskets without meat and dairy were less popular when focusing on content, vegan or plant-based, rather than outcomes, health, and sustainability. Labeling effect was consistent across sociodemographic groups, but was stronger among self-identified red meat eaters. The labels provide a low-cost intervention for promoting healthy and sustainable food choices, and changing the labels of vegan food to focus on health and environmental benefits may promote dietary changes recommended by public health and environmental experts. And I wanted to say at the end that a lot of news media pick up this study, and we were interviewed at the Washington Post, but also a lot of news media from Europe interviewed us, and we were every time trying to emphasize that these food baskets were really healthier and more sustainable, and there is a risk here that these strategies are going to be used for food that is not necessarily healthy or sustainable. Thank you.